What is the OnePlus 9R? Is it a refresh of the OnePlus 8T? Is it a downgraded OnePlus 9? Or is it a flagship for the Indian audience? Well, yes, it's all of those. But it's also a damn good phone. And in today's video, we are gonna find out if it's the right phone for you. And I'm sure there are gonna be a lot of OnePlus 9R unboxings on YouTube. So instead of going through all that, let's jump straight to the good stuff. Gotta love those peels, right? And here's what we get inside the red box. The customary case, a 65-watt warp charger, the red cable, the red club invite, the SIM ejector pin, some paperwork, and of course the phone itself, the 12 to 56 GB OnePlus 9R in Lake Blue. By the way guys, if you like how we do things here at C4E Tech, then consider subbing to the channel as well as hitting that bell icon. It really does help us out a lot. So, on to the big question then. Should you choose the OnePlus 9 over the 9R? Well, let's first look at what's changed here. And the biggest one is of course in the camera department. The design for the camera bump has been updated to match the rest of the 9 series, minus the Hasselblad branding of course. Both the 9 and 9R sport 48 megapixel primary snappers, but the sensors themselves are different. The 9R gets the older Sony IMX586 from the 8T paired with an optically stabilized f1.7 lens. Side by side against the IMX689 from the OnePlus 9, the most noticeable difference here was the colors. Saturated blues and unnatural greens on the 9R. The 9 though retains more natural colors. And if we were to pixel peep like we did, you can see slightly better details on the 9. Now I expected the 9R to turn the tables under low light cause OIS does give it a big advantage. And true to that, the pictures did turn out much brighter. But in some cases, the OnePlus 9 actually took the lead when it came to details, and the colors on the 9R, they seem a little bit unnatural if I may say so. To be fair, the big draw for the OnePlus 9 is the 50 megapixel Sony IMX786 sensor. Compared to that, the pictures taken by the 16 megapixel ultra wide on the 9R aren't really even in the same zip code. Crop in and you can see just how much sharper the OnePlus 9 is. The colors too look better on the 9. To its credit though, the OnePlus 9R does match up in terms of dynamic range. Now, the 9R comes with a 5 megapixel dedicated macro camera. The 9 skips on that, instead using the primary and ultra-wide camera for its macro photography. And surprise, surprise, it takes crisper shots with more vibrant colors. And finally, we get to the 2 megapixel monochrome sensor. That's just there to inflate the numbers. Speaking of numbers, we have the 8K video capture on the OnePlus 9. OnePlus doesn't let us do that on the 9R, even though the 870 can technically capture 8K. The best we can do with the 9R is 4K 60 FPS. Now, you'd expect optical image stabilization to play a big part in the stability, but what again ended up surprising me was that how much more detailed the video from the 9 seemed to be. Other than that, the camera apps here look very similar. Take a look at the Hasselblad Pro mode versus the regular Pro mode on the 9R. Doesn't seem to be all that different, right? And it's not just the software overlap, the cameras on the OnePlus 9R are exactly what we had seen on the 8T last year. Cameras aside, one more area where the OnePlus 9 comes out ahead is in terms of sheer horsepower. The Snapdragon 870 inside the 9R is no slouch, but when it comes to benchmarks, the 888 scores higher. After all, that's kind of expected when we compare this year's flagship chip to last year's one. Yeah, the 870 is basically an overclocked 865, the very same chip that we have seen inside the OnePlus 8T. But hey, today's focus is on the 9 versus 9R, so let's test that out with some demanding titles. First up, Genshin Impact. Looks insanely good on both phones. And that 240Hz touch sampling means panning around this gorgeous vistas feels effortless. Let's then ramp it up with Call of Duty Mobile at very high graphics and max frame rate. And this is where the Adreno 660 edges out ahead of the Adreno 650 inside the 9R. It's not that the OnePlus 9 pushes a lot more frames than the 9R. It's more to do with the jankiness, the odd frame drop when there's a lot happening on screen. So frame rates more consistent on the 9. Having said that, the 9R is still very playable, and I can only point out the difference because I have them here side by side. For the regular mobile gamer, I think the 9R does the job pretty well. It's been kitted out with 8 or 12 gigs of RAM and has the same 128 or 256 gigs of UFS 3.1 storage that we have seen on the OnePlus 9. And in typical OnePlus fashion, there's no room for microSD, just the dual SIMs. Generally, 5G isn't a focus in our videos, but since these are expensive devices, and some of you may be wondering if it's worth spending the extra bucks for, long time usage, here's a look at the 5G bands that's supported by the Indian variant of the OnePlus 9 as well as the 9R. Yeah, there's just one extra band on the 9. And in case you were wondering, here's what the 865 toting 8T had support for. The exact same N78 band that we have on the 9R. So basically, what does this mean? The 9 and 9R are 5G devices in name only, with support for just two bands and no clear idea on which 5G bands carriers are going to operate here in India. Buying the OnePlus 9 doesn't really give you any long time advantage. But hey, why do I keep mentioning the Indian variant of the OnePlus 9? Because globally, the OnePlus 9 has a support for a lot more 5G bands. And it also has wireless charging. That's also something that's been cut out from the Indian variant, which means no wireless charging on either the 9 or the 9R here. At least we have slightly faster wired charging on the 9. Warp Charge 65T claims to take the 4500 mAh battery on the 9 from 0 to 100 in less than half an hour. We have the same 4500 mAh unit on the 9R as well, but since it uses the slower Warp Charge 65 that debuted with the 8T, this takes about 10 minutes more. So again, not really a big deal, but something worth mentioning. As far as battery life goes, well, given that the capacity is the same and so are the displays, it boils down to the fact that the 9 has a more powerful processor, but it's based on a more power efficient 5nm architecture. You guys know where I'm heading with this, right? The battery life on the 9R is very similar to what we got out of the OnePlus 9. Nothing mind-blowing, but enough to take you through most days. Okay, so looks like we have kind of transitioned from the differences into the similarities. So let's now take a look at the design. Camera bump aside, the 9 and 9R look pretty darn similar. Two slabs of Corning Gorilla Glass 5 held together by a frame. Except that this is an aluminium frame on the 9R. The one on the 9, that's plastic. Baffling? Yes, very much so. I mean, they did change the design from the 8T, but decided to retain the metal frame. I mean, hey, I'm not complaining. It's just weird that the lower price product actually sports the better build quality. As far as handling goes though, these two feel very similar. The 9R is slightly thicker and heavier. I'm talking less than 7 grams and a third of a millimeter here. Guess that might be because of the metal frame. But thanks to me being used to larger and larger phones, anything under 200 grams now feels pretty darn comfortable to use. Two-handed, of course. But the biggest similarity between these two has to be the display. From the front, the 9 and 9R basically look identical, down to even the punch holes and the selfie sensor inside of them. This is, of course, the Sony IMX471 sensor. Ash didn't have many kind words to say about it in our review of the OnePlus 9. And unfortunately, neither do I. Decent is the best I could muster. The display surrounding it though, that's gorgeous. It might be the same 120Hz Fluid AMOLED panel from last year, but I have no complaints about this 6.55-inch Full HD Plus panel. We have HDR10 as well as Widevine L1 support, and frankly, media on it looks beautiful. The deep inky blacks and vibrant colors draw you in, and then there are the stereo speakers. Rich sound and good volume, just like the OnePlus 9. good enough that it makes the pain of losing the headphone jack a little easier to bear. Of course, the high refresh rate is amazing for gamers, but thanks to just how fluid Oxygen OS is, navigating through menus or just opening up apps feels super snappy. Oxygen OS just gives this element of speed throughout the whole UI, and you can feel it as soon as you pick up a OnePlus device. Of course, this is Oxygen OS 11 based on Android 11, so same features, same buttery smoothness, down to even the fingerprint scanner. This one's embedded inside the screen and seems just as fast as the one on the 9. So before we get to the price, here's a quick recap. Build OnePlus 9R because of the metal frame. Displays, same. Performance, obviously that goes to the OnePlus 9. Connectivity, they're pretty similar, 2 versus 1 band. Battery life, again, similar, yes, Warp Charge 65T is faster, but not really by that much. Cameras, again, that goes to the OnePlus 9. So, yes, the OnePlus 9 is a better phone. But is it worth spending a quarter of your budget more on it? Guys, the OnePlus 9 begins from 50,000 rupees. The 9R in comparison is 10,000 rupees cheaper. Now, are those cameras 10,000 rupees better? Not really. And would I pay 10,000 more for the processor? Hell no. So from where I stand, the answer seems pretty clear. Make the right choice, go for the OnePlus 9R. Now, if there were more 5G bands included as well as wireless charging, and by the way, these are features that are actually included in OnePlus 9s sold outside of India, then we could have made a case for it. But as it stands right now, I think most people would find better bang for their buck by sticking with the OnePlus 9R. So, do you guys agree with me? Or do you think the OnePlus 9 is the better choice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And with that, we come to the end of this video. As always, like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications by hitting that bell icon if you haven't yet. Thanks a lot for watching till the end, guys. Have a good one. Cheers.